It being 4:02, I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have Bob Bastinto, co-chair, Roy Gott, co-chair, Mark Perka, Mike Summerer, and Tom Toll, committee members, and consultant guest Dan Demerit. I don't have a thing on here for adjustments to the agenda, but I'm just going to add a little approval for a newspaper charge for the RFP under update of action steps after the RFP, just so we're aware of that. But before we get to that, approval of the August 23rd, 2023 meeting minutes. Did everybody on the committee get a chance to review those? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as written?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes as written. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. All right, update of action steps from prior meeting. This is going to be real fast. The RFP was posted. Though it may just be sort of perfunctory to cover our bases and make sure that we've advertised it. It is going out in newspapers, but it was sent directly to the contractors and the vendors that Mission Broadband has identified in the area that are interested in these projects and do these projects. So it was sent directly out, and we're just going to cover our bases by making sure that's in the newspaper as well. So far, I haven't gotten any questions back, which either means no questions have been submitted, or if they've been submitted, they went to Mission Broadband and Mission Broadband hasn't forwarded them on. But the deadline for questions, I think, was on the 25th. And having heard none, I assume anybody who was looking at the RFP didn't have any ambiguities that they thought needed clearing up. So is really all that is for that one. But for the, I'm not going to share it here, but I have the prices for the broadband for the RFP newspaper posting, and one price is Ellsworth American, one price is Bangor Daily, and I've just got to switch over to that account. And I was actually surprised at how expensive it is, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that much. So Ellsworth American is $179.02. And the Bangor Daily, which is of course the more relevant one, is $195. So I'm sure we have that in our Get Ready Connect funding, and if not, we have it from the other pots of money that we still have left over. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the charges in the amounts of $179.02 and $195 for the posting of the RFP in the newspaper.
I'll make a motion to accept those charges, pay them.
All right, well, I will take Bob's motion. And who was gonna be the second there?
Second to pay the bills.
Second to pay the bills, Mark Perka. All right. All right, any discussion on those?
I think along the lines of what your comment was, it does seem like a lot, but it is what it is too, right?
Yeah. So, like I said, just to make sure we cover our bases, if nothing else. I don't know that we're going to have much larger reach than we have by mailing people directly. So, all right.
When will those notices be in the papers?
Well, ideally it should have been in there already, but as soon as I give the go ahead, Brianna at the town office in Gouldsboro is going to hit the button and place the order and send in. It's just a basic little copy. So I don't know if that's going to be next week, Ellsworth American, but I think, let's just see here.
Let's see. Well, Ellsworth comes out on Thursday, so tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not in tomorrow's paper, that's for sure. It might be next week. And then Bangor Daily said the earliest I can get this in would be Friday. So Bangor Daily will probably have it before Ellsworth American.
Mhm.
And how long do they run?
You know, that's not listed in here. So, but they did approve. I can ask, but I mean, obviously Ellsworth American's a weekly. It may just be for 1 week. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't know that
That's
there's any,
fine.
I don't know that there's an actual time requirement per se even. Basically, I said the same process that they use for bidding for town things like plowing and salt and sand and so forth, because I figure if it's good enough for their bidding process, it's good enough for our process.
Yep.
All right. So we have a motion and a second on that to authorize those newspaper posting charges. Without any further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Nothing specific under Gouldsboro or Winter Harbor or information gathering. We're pretty much still in a holding pattern until we get the closing date for the RFPs. But Dan joins us tonight, having sent out a little email reminding everybody to spend all of our Get Ready Connect money that's practical to spend before the end of the year when it has to be given back. And so I think that's most of what we've got to discuss today, is what we should be looking at going forward.
Well, before we get too far, and since you're in the mood for unanimously spending money, I shared this invoice last month and just wanted to make sure did it get processed, you know,
You know what? I will download another copy and forward it on to onto them in
Thank you.
case it didn't.
I got a September 15th email that it hadn't been paid yet by the vendor. So just
Okay,
and again, I apologize. It sat in my mailbox. I don't check my mail unless I'm expecting a check almost at this point in my life. Because so much is automized and comes electronically, but that sat in my mailbox for a long time. So I apologize. So please, I own most of that in terms, but I do a lot of work with this vendor. So thank you. But happy to talk about ideas, or happy to be here as a resource. If you know ideas in terms of what you could do to engage and draw down some of those communication resources before the end of the calendar year. And I have a meeting tomorrow with Kendra Joe. So if you have questions, I can certainly bring those into that meeting and get back to you.
okay. I'm just gonna forward this along, but if you have specific suggestions, why don't you go ahead and just get started on that? You know, sort of where we're at in the process, so.
So I do think it makes sense. And I don't have a list in front of me of all the different steps you've taken to communicate, but I do think the RFP is an interesting process, and kind of awareness around what that can entail, and maybe a roadmap in terms of where you go from here, so people know that. And I'm not sure what your plans will be to consider the RFPs. I don't know if you'll have community meetings around that, but I know those have been an effective way for groups to communicate and bring people together. And the funding from the Get Ready funding can be used for events. It can be used for mailers. Some communities have used it to buy equipment for town offices, for meetings and things like that. So I don't have I'm happy if you wanted to charge me with, and I would do this, it wouldn't cost you wouldn't see an invoice for this, but if we wanted to have a discussion about what action points or information points you may have over the next 3 months, I'd be happy to come back to you, shoot something back to you by email. I know you're not
Yep.
meeting again until November 1st, but I'd be happy to shoot something back to you with some ideas on some things you could do.
So just as not an aside, but in relation to this, I have computer customers, and one of them recently, his daughter typically comes up and stays at his house. He's very much older. He's probably upper 80s. And she works from the house a lot, and she struggles with the consolidated internet. This is on Kingsley Farms Road off of South Gouldsboro Road. And he's very motivated to find a better solution. And right now, the only better solution practically for his location is Starlink. And he's really not interested in that. He had said that he and a number of people on that road he suspects would be willing to put a deposit down to help move the process a little bit faster. And I explained I really appreciate that motivation. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think it's great to have people lining up. And so I would like to capitalize personally on some of that and maybe do a mailer about what the process looks like going forward. Obviously, we've had the outreach events, and that's gotten a few people, but I'd like to, like you said, maybe do a timeline of what we have coming down the pipeline, out of the RFP process, to let people know sort of what's on the horizon, and to hopefully maybe get some engagement there. And I think it might be, I mean, we could certainly do it to the entire population, or maybe we want to try and target the mailing, though it's more expensive to mail fewer pieces to specific addresses than it is to just mail everyone in the town generally. So, or everyone in a zip code, I should say. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, and we need to keep people engaged, particularly since they're getting bombarded from some other vendors, they see it on TV and hear it on the radio and stuff like that. So I think it's really important that we keep them right up to speed with what we're doing.
We bombard them too.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
They asked for it.
This is just not so much, this is not trying to be sneaky or anything at all, but for example, when I was running for a state rep, one of the things that one of the people who was helping the independent candidates suggested is, with your seed money, which is that little bit of money outside of state money that you're able to raise at the outset when you're trying to be a clean elections candidate, one of the things you do is you spend that money on postage ahead of time. So I'm not saying we should try to, if we've got money left over, should we buy postage and supplies to be able to do further mailings? They would technically be expenditures before the money has to be returned, though we might not be using them. I'm not saying we should do that. I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe it's a question for Dan, if that's something that would be frowned upon if we have a certain amount of money left over to try and capitalize on it.
Well, we charge 18.5% interest annualized for anything we have to claw back. No, I'm just teasing you. I think it makes, when do you think the RFP pieces will come back? You think it'll be?
Let me pull up the document, and that will tell me when the deadline is. Jeff. Attachments. So let's see here. The all proposals are due by 5 o'clock at the end of October, on the 30th, basically. So we will have all of our respondents' answers in by end of day October 30th. And then we'll probably, at least do a preliminary review on the 1st of November or thereabouts.
Mhm. And I definitely think, you know, I'll ask Ken or Joe about it. I don't think, you know, buying a bunch of rolls of stamps and stashing them in a drawer somewhere is the right way to go. But and it won't be that. No, and who wants to put all those stamps on? You make sure you get the self-adhesive one so you don't have to.
I don't think they make
Yeah.
the glue ones anymore. I think they're all self-adhesive at this point.
Yeah. So yeah, I used to. I got my start when with Susan Collins back when she ran for governor against Angus in 1994, and I licked a lot of envelopes asking the same 200 people for money back then when she was just, you know, she's just some kid
Wow.
from Caribou running for governor, right?
There was a time that Susan Collins wasn't in Congress?
It was,
Mhm.
yeah, I was there. Just the little known Dan Demerit fact: you can't get elected for the first time as a Republican to statewide office without having me on your campaign. I was on Susan's campaign, and I was on Paul's first campaign when she. So it's been interesting, but you learn a lot about mail and bulk mail and stuff like that in those little races when you're just getting started. I'm sure now they use vendors who, you know, they vend it all out. So,
Yeah.
But I think queuing up a mailer, you know, updating people on where you are now and inviting people, particularly when you have energy around signing up. You know, I know you've got your website's got a sign up list for people to be, you know, join your email list, and that's capacity building that'll be helpful in, you know, back when you're ready to start talking to people about signing up for an, you know, for an option to, you know, sign on, you know, take rate and stuff like that. So I think that makes a lot of sense to do at least one of those now. And then maybe, do you think you'll have a decision by the end of the calendar year?
Well, I don't think it's gonna take us 2 months to figure out which of the proposals looks the best. So I certainly would like to have a decision by the end of the calendar year. I think it's doable.
Yeah.
Um,
But then you'll have to ramp up. And I assume when you talk about, is it Gouldsboro where you'll need a public meeting for some sort of public investment?
So Gouldsboro and Winter Harbor both to approve the interlocal agreement which will basically formalize the two towns working together to bring this project forward. And potentially, if it ends up being a municipally owned broadband district, it'll be the basis for that as well. So we'll see
And then
what
also an investment ask too, or
well, so we're basically trying to get ready for that next round of funding that's going to be coming down,
Yeah.
grant funding. And so if we know, yeah, we would know from the RFP process what the total project cost looks like. I think what it may be the case, based on what our discussions with Jeff have been, you know, figure out who the vendor is that looks like the best match, and then, you know, if we need to alter the scope of the project to basically make it more feasible and self-sustaining, uh, based on grant eligibility, I think that's some of the negotiation that we would have at that point, perhaps, back and forth with the vendor. And then, yeah, certainly if we can time it right to have a public meeting in both towns, I mean, we need to ask for support in both towns, basically, probably is the way I understand the process. So,
so some kind of, and that'll be a public vote. And I mean, that's the kind of that's the ball game, right? I mean, you'll need to get that passed.
right.
And so, and how much do you have left in your get ready after you've just, you know, you have $7,000 or $8,000 left, you think, or?
Let me see. Find the last reporting period from Sandy, maybe. That was July. That was the last reporting period, so it looks like we have spent about, I would say, 6,800 as of middle of July.
Okay, so you got about 3,000 left to play with after these two, you're gonna have, so a little less, I mean, I think we'd get a mailer out the door for you.
Yeah.
And then I could work with Bangor Letter to mock up something for you in terms of what your zip codes are, and help you come up with thoughts about content based on the timeline, the path forward you want to outline for people, and then maybe a QR code, or for people or to jump on your website and sign up for your mailing list. I don't know how robust your mailing list is yet, but it never hurts to sign people up for that.
Yeah, they're trickling in basically. We had, I would say, a few bursts of activity after our outreach meetings, and beyond that, it's just been here or there. I send out about once a month anyway, an email through MailChimp, and usually there's one or two who sign up or sign up again accidentally for that, and they tend to share it a little bit, but that's about it. It's not particularly robust. I don't remember offhand, but it's not bad for a start. About around 100 or so.
And have you done and forgive me if I don't, have you done a survey yet? Have you done like any kind of community survey, like with a survey tool, or?
So we did surveys early on to gauge levels of service in the communities. I don't remember the exact numbers, somewhere around 140 responses between the two towns, I think.
Okay.
That was last year, and we haven't done additional surveys since then, but I don't know that we have questions that are
relevant at this point.
Relevant at this point. Yeah. I think once we have responses from the RFP and we know what the project would look like in a more concrete form, then we could put some additional questions to people. Say, would you be interested in this service?
Yeah. And you could do that, promote it through your MailChimp, but also you could also promote it through social media channels and things like that. Maybe even promote some posts to get some traction with it, because that'll be, from a digital equity perspective, you want to be able to reach people who aren't online right now, in terms of how do you make it available to people who most need support to transition to, the broadband and service. But you can, feels like the mailer is where you're at right now, an update on where you are, making sure people know that you've got something. This is significant. You're out looking to develop a project, and you should. It's a strategic step forward, and I think it makes sense to let people know about it. And I don't know that you necessarily want to wait until. Are you thinking you want to wait until you have the results and do a mailer in like November, once you kind of have a sense of where you're going to go with it?
Well, anybody on the committee feel free to jump in, but I don't know that I personally think we have much to share other than the RFP is out and we're waiting to see what comes back for our next steps. I just don't know that we've got a lot of content other than we could, like we said, we could do timeline just to let people know what the process is looking like, but I'm not sure that there's more than that. But Mark, you're unmuted. And Bob.
I agree. I mean, I think it's just, it's from what I see as far as things laying out, there's not enough good news to share just yet until the RFPs come back, and probably even hopefully make a decision at that point and share that milestone, if you will, and build on that, kind of share that milestone and then build on it from there.
Sure. I mean, once a successful bidder has been identified, now comes the provisioning and rollout of the project. So this is where project management would come into play, and that's something that we could maybe do a framework on that, what's managing expectations for each town. So, but that would be with working with the bidder
Yeah.
on that, with their provisioning folks, because everything is driven by them. So something to consider. Do
Yeah.
we want to roll that out to the population? That's another story, because things can slip. Now we're going to get into winter time, and from all indications, we're going to get creamed this year. So that may be putting delays.
Right, and of course, we're not moving forward on a project until the next round of funding anyway,
Right.
because there's no way that the towns can float this on their own.
Mhm.
So I'm not
And when's
sure
that
that,
funding come out? Do we know when that funding possibly would come out? Is that like spring or summer of next year, or any idea?
I don't know yet, Dan. I presume I saw a little shake of the head there. I assume that guidance is not out yet.
No, I haven't seen the guidance yet. I mean, I've been on
Yeah.
Maine Connectivity Authority website every day. I know that it's going to be several weeks before I mean, they just got past the deadline for Get Ready 2 and or Connect Ready 2. So it'll be a while before they have those decisions out. Excuse me.
So I think, we get through the end of this year and then we'll probably have more guidance about when the next round of funding is going to actually open up. And I would expect that that's what we're trying to target for that. But I think we don't need to get into really technical discussions about the service, but it's mostly just, I think, we get back the proposals, we evaluate, we choose who our partner is going to be, and then we can push what information we have at that point. I just don't feel there's enough meat yet to justify a mailer before November. As much as I want to keep interest high, but I don't want to just spend money for the sake of spending money. Much, to the contrary to the opinion that I'm sure a lot of people think of me on the school board.
Yeah, as a freebie and just as a little blurb, certainly for Gouldsboro, we could have them put something in the newsletter that just says, the RFP is out.
Right.
And
Well, Gouldsboro and Winter Harbor both. I know there's, there should be room in both newsletters for a little paragraph of the work that we're doing.
yeah,
So,
just to let people know.
And that's actually a great avenue to, simply update people. Those newsletters left.
Right.
Seems like a lot of people actually really look forward to those, I've
Mhm.
even got some neighbors who live down in Winter Harbor, and they actually want copies of ours from over here in Gouldsboro. So they're sharing of them as well.
And where we tend to meet at the end of the month, we usually miss the deadline, but that's something we could certainly put on just to put a little a blurb for the next month's newsletters. So we get that out and start thinking about it now, and maybe we'll actually make the deadline, which is usually around the 20th. So, okay. Any other, I know you said some meetings or parties or things like that, Dan, but
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you've got same thing. If you're not going to bother people with a mailer, you definitely don't want to bother them with a meeting, in terms of, you know what I mean? Like if you don't feel like you've got enough sorry, I don't mean to hit that nail on the head that much, but I mean, that's kind of what I heard from you. And I do think, a mailer, and you'd still work within, it sounds like you'd still work within the time frame for the grant to expend on a mailer before the end of the year. And I could help you get that set up.
Yeah.
If you wanted me to, it'd be easier than working, photocopying and doing the stamps on your own. You mail you tell me what zip codes you need to hit. I can come back to you with a proposal.
So I don't know what the price is for that, but typically what we've done with the things that we've mailed out so far, which have been we did the surveys in both towns, and we did mailings about the three community outreach meetings that we did. And those went to every mailing address in both towns. And that was, I mean, it was a matter of about like $180, I think, for the both of each time. So that was, you know, sort of foisted off onto the town offices. They didn't say no, I'll put it that way. We asked, they said yes, and so I don't know if that seems like, is that more cost effective to do it your way or the way we've done it? And also I'd say if we're doing a high quality, more designed piece that maybe is on a different type of paper, that's a different sort of a thing. Like, I mean, this might be the time to do something a little bit higher end to impress people a little bit more.
I think so. I'm gonna put like, if I don't know what the universe is. What do you think the universe is of residents in across your communities? A couple thousand people?
I think, well, total number of residents, there's roughly 1,500 in Gouldsboro, and yeah, there's fewer than 2,000 people between the two towns, certainly fewer than that number of addresses.
So this is a Bangor letter did this for me in the spring. This is an estimate on what glossy. This is gloss campaign style. I mean,
Mhm.
nobody likes you get way too many of those during campaign season. So the nice thing this thing is if you send it out in early December, it won't be campaign season.
It'll stand out.
It'll stand out, glossy, 4-color, 5.5 by 8.5, two-sided. You get 2,000 of those for delivered to every resident, every zip code, every resident in the zip code for assuming 2,000 for $1,244. I mean, maybe that changes a little bit because the estimate's several months old now, but that's what you're looking at ballpark to do a high quality mailer that would get yourself elected to the state legislature or certainly the school board, but especially if you're running unopposed. I don't know what I don't know what that's been like for you, but
no, I mean, 1,200, and that seems to fit within the remaining budget that we have very comfortably. So I think that would be good. Come up with the content and just be able to give people something nice and give them something to look forward to.
Maybe what I could do, I know you've got a November 1 meeting for the next schedule. I'd be happy to attend that meeting, get that on my calendar. You'll have gotten the RFP responses back, so maybe you can give me a little direction on what you want to do for content, and then I'll work with a vendor to get it mocked up for you to look at and approve. And if you guys,
I think that would be good, and we'll put that on for next time.
Perfect.
Mailer planning. Any other thoughts from committee members about other things we want to spend all our money on?
I think you should sponsor storm coverage for all those storms we're going to get, because people eat that stuff up. Brought to you by the Scudic Peninsula Broadband Committee. Winter storm, winter cyclone, winter bomb. They know what they're doing when they name those things.
Okay, well, in the absence of any other thoughts on that, I think I said in the email that I'm going to be at a conference basically the next last Monday of the month. So I would be probably unavailable. And I think it makes sense to meet after we get the RFPs back anyway. So I have it there for November 1st at 4. Does that work for people for the most part? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, That sounds good then. We'll leave it on that schedule. And anybody have any other thoughts?
I just have a question from the last meeting. We had a question about licensing on existing poles. You remember that
Yep.
question? Is
I
that
think-
a ongoing thing or whatever? Did that get answered?
I think Jeff was going to look at that, and I don't know that he actually did, but tell you what, let's do while we're thinking about it. Oh, by the way, following on that, the question about the legal reference in the interlocal agreement, Dan Sullivan was going to check on with their lawyer just to see what that was about. But I will send an email to Dan and ask him that question, because that may be easier to find out from DBU directly. So
Quick question, Roy, what was the next time you wanted to have the meeting?
November 1st, 4 o'clock.
Okay, that's a
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay, yep, all right. Just, no problem.
All right, so just sending right now. So I'm asking Dan Sullivan question about poll licensing. Is that a one-time charge or do those recur? I think that's the crux of the concern that that we had, because that was what was raised at that outreach meeting. That was one of the questions. So I'll see if Dan has an easy answer for that. I can't imagine that it would be an ongoing thing forever, because that would be a large cost over time. I would think that would be I would assume it's a very large cost over time, but that's what we asked the question for. All right, and I'll forward that answer to the committee when it comes in. All right, anyone else? Well, I guess we're gonna have an early night because it is 4:40. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second,
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks, everybody.
you,
Have a-
everybody.
Have a good October.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good conference.
I'll do my best. See you, Bob. Mark.